Hey guys, so this video is about setting up your file to get ready for animation for your final film. So you've been skinning your character. You have all the joints skinned to and all that stuff ready to go. Um, uh, but say you didn't, you can if you're still in the skinning step, you can potentially still start animating and fix your skinning later, and those changes will be reflected on the file. And I'll show you how to do that. The way we do that is called making a reference of the characters. So this is the reference editor, and this is a referenced in version of that file. So I'm going to start where all of you should start. So I'm going to open up a new scene. I'm going to not save. And you'll see this new blank scene has nothing in it. And I'm going to go to File, then Reference Editor, that panel that you just saw me in, and say I have a character that's not completely done being skinned. It is bound to all the joints, and all your controls and joints are finalized. So what you would do is create a reference, and then I'm going to point it to that rig file. So grandma rig, we'll reference that in. So now grandma's in the scene, and you'll notice in the outliner, all of the nodes associated with her have this diamond in it. The diamond means that it's a reference file. Now, what a reference file is a copy of that source file, or in our case, the rig, that is brought in and loaded every time you open up that Maya file. So look down at this skirt. So little bottom of the tunic slash skirt has this weird point when she bends both legs. I'm going to need to go in and repaint some weights on that to fix it. But the problem with that is, if I was animating on the rig file, like say this was, instead of being a new scene with a reference file, if this was the rig itself imported into my scene, and then I fixed it in the source file for the rig, then you wouldn't see those changes because you've imported it in to your scene. What we needed to do was reference it in. So what we've done here is reference that. So now we can go in and change all those skinning values, and then you'll see that it's fixed upon reopening this file. There's a few things that this won't work with. So don't start animating with your controls if they're not the proper name. Because the next time, if in your source rig file you renamed it, then when Maya opens up, loads in that reference, and then loads in the animation data, it's going to search for that old name still, and it won't be able to apply the proper keys. So say you had keys on this hand, and then in your source rig file, the grandma rig.mb, if you open that up and then change the name, and then I'm just going to key that. You'll see the key pops up down there. You would open this file, and Maya would look for that old name, not find it, and then this key would no longer exist. So then it would just be in its default state. I'm just going to delete this and zero that out. It would just appear like that, and your animation would be lost. So don't do it if you're gonna don't start animating if you're gonna rename controls still. And then let's see what else. Oh yeah, referencing only works with consistent file directory. So say I'm going to save this scene out. I'm going to do animations. I'm just going to save over this test one I was doing. So say I go into my hierarchies or my folders, and then this is the file that I put in, that I referenced into this scene. This file that you see right here, like this grandma, is the referenced version of this rig file. So if because this is outside of the rig folder, which doesn't make much sense, if I move this back in here, now it's in a different spot, right? So if I opened up this file, you'll see that the the mesh got referenced in, but it's like a really old version of it, first of all. And second of all, it's not the rig. It doesn't have any of the rig controls. So what you need to do is right click on this reference, and then you're going to do a replace reference, or you can just go to this unresolved name, copy your file path from where the new location of that rig is, and then paste it into there, and then it would find it for you and reference it in. But I'm just going to do reference replace. Going to go into that rig folder that I moved it into, and reference that in, and there you go. So now it is fixed. So that's how you fix a broken reference path. So that's pretty much it for referencing. But now you got to set up some stuff for your scene. So we haven't gone over any sort of. I'm just gonna close the reference editor now, and I'll close the graph editor. Sure. So you need to render out these scenes, right? That's gonna be the end goal, and you're gonna need a camera to do that with. So in case you didn't know, you can always select your current camera, and you'll see its perspective. You can select it with this button in the viewport, and you get a bunch of different attributes that you can key in here as well. But we're gonna make a new camera for ourselves. So I just made this camera, and I'm gonna open up with space. I'm gonna open up the multi-panel view, and I'm gonna change one of these panels to be that camera. So now as I move this camera around, you can see that you can see the scene that I will be rendering. And in these options, if you turn on something called resolution gate, it's right here. You can see how it's going to frame it when you're finally rendering. So I'm going to get Grandma on the 3/4 here. I'm just kind of point the camera down as well, and kind of adjust it back right there. Right, perfect. All right, so this camera, you'll see, has all these values that we just put onto it. What we need to do is start setting up keys. And you'll notice if I go forward in the timeline and then enter this view, you're gonna want to be careful because I'm gonna turn on. I'm gonna request that you guys animate with something called auto key. So with auto key enabled, if you move around any control that you have keys on, notice how it automatically put a key. You can see it a lot better if I move it. It put a key on 10 because I was on frame 10. If I move over to frame 25, and drag a lot right there, it automatically put a key right there. So now it's going to go through. And you might not want these keys because you might want to have more control over it. So I wouldn't really move it from this perspective. I would instead move my camera around from this angle and kind of just make sure it's what you want in here. And then you can always click on this panel so you can see which panel it's going to update by, which one it has like vaguely highlighted. So with this one highlighted, you can see that it's going to show our keys. So that's setting up a camera real quick. And you can, again, you can have all these different channels like focal lengths. You can also key this. So if I key the selected one right there, and then go forward in time, and then if you click on the channel and then a middle click drag, you can adjust that parameter, and you can see that it is now keyed that. So it's pretty nifty. But before you start animating, again, you're going to need to adjust some settings. So I'm going to go into settings and preferences. And I'm going to start with the first overall thing. I like meters just so I can see better my like grid, because that grid was super tiny at her feet earlier. And you're going to want to adjust time. So time right now is 24 FPS. Since I work in a game environment, I'm going to be animating at 30 FPS. And you'll notice that my timeline shifted. And it moved this over to starting at frame 1 0.25, which doesn't make sense. That's like a quarter of a frame in past the first frame. Like, nah, nah. So I'm just gonna click on that right box of these two, and then adjust that to be 1, and you'll see that that has adjusted as well. But that key that's on the camera still is a little bit askew. So if that happens, you can always do snap on this, and it'll snap it to that timeline. You can also do that in the graph editor by just pulling it around. So yeah, we got those settings in. You guys are probably going to be animating at 24 FPS. Alternatively, you can also go lower. I've personally never animated in 12 in Maya, but I've seen it done stylistically. But you could also do that by animating at 24 frames a second and then just rendering out every other frame and then holding it for an extra frame. That would be the same thing as animating at 12 FPS. And some people might want to do that for stylistic reasons to make it look a little bit more like hand-drawn ish or anime ish, because anime usually has a lower frame rate for character animation. But yeah, so I'm going to stay at 30, but you guys can stay at 24. So those two settings are set up. Then with our camera in the scene that we're able to look through and knowing what we're going to be rendering out, you can kind of start making your scene. You'll notice that I overrode the Lambert, the default shader in the other one. So I'm going to assign a new material, Lambert. Or Lambert, if you're a French boy. So I'm going to move this. Let's kind of get this in frame. Right there. Okay. So my animation is basically going to be Grandma like idling at a shop or at her shop, and so I'm going to set up some kind of, place to display her wares. So gonna get a nice little lineup of this. And yeah, this is pretty much just regular modeling. You guys have done this before. Make a little tent shack type thing. This is like basically the same principles that you were using with modeling your objects, right? The only thing is that now you have to, if you're going to make your own scene, you're gonna have to do a lot of them. But I'll show you an alternative to that, because I mean, we are crunched on time, guys. So if you don't want to model your entire environment, I understand. But yeah, so like making a little tent thing right here. I'd probably go in with modeling toolkit, make a few multi-cuts right here. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Then a little soft selection. Just drag this down in world. Perfect. Right there. So yeah, I mean that's basically, you just make your environment and have it lined up with cam, because you're going to be animating to cam, right? And then let's see. I am going to go into animation controls, because there's some really nice controls on these. Like you can switch between IK and FK. I might save that for a later date. But yeah, so basically, referencing is good as long as you can keep track of where that file is. And remember, you can always reroute it to that file if it gets lost. Don't rename those controls, though, after you reference it in and start animating. And get the FPS. And yeah, camera stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it for setting up your scenes and starting to animate. The rest is just you know, the animating the entire project, finishing the entire owl. You just start posing it, posing your character, wherever which way they gonna be, and this is yeah, the rest is just pure animation. That's why, and it's the process that I love most, because it just, out of all of the different ways to animate, like experimentally, traditionally, or or 3D. Like 3D is just pure pose, pure posing, pure animating. Like you don't have to worry about any of that other stuff, like drawing. My God. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for this video. Hope it's informative, and yeah, talk to you later.